but it's really for all ages, but it's completely appropriate for children. And I was looking through another book, and it was actually the kid book, the children's book was actually harder to read than this book. So I chose this book instead. So it's Ghosts of the Carolinas, and they're short stories about both North Carolina ghost stories and South Carolina ghost stories. So they're not just North Carolina stories. And because North Carolina, bless you, had a history of shipwrecks and a lot of farm families and family feuds, there's a lot of conflict in ghosts. So ghosts occur where there's conflict and there's wars, and there was a lot of war happening in North Carolina, especially the Revolutionary War and the Civil War. So you have a lot of spirits who stay, who want to recreate what happened to them. There's a lot of love stories, and this story that I'm about to read is a love story. And there's also a lot of great stories in South Carolina too, but today we're going to focus on North Carolina. So a little about the author. Her name's Nancy Roberts. She lives in Charlotte, and she loves history, folklore, animals, and travel. She presents storytelling programs at schools, libraries, clubs, and universities. And this book, the cover photo was by her husband, Bruce. And this book was first published in 1962. So it's pretty old. It's over 50 years old. So the story today is called The Ring, and it's about death brings a coveted ring. Do you know what the word coveted means? Covet to mean is to want really badly, and disaster to a greedy young woman. So I'm going to read the story, and then you can have your questions at the end. And I'm here till, is it your time, our time together? 2:15. Okay. I don't want to go over time. And this is a story of two sisters, and then I'm going to sing a song that is about the sister and her the fellow that she falls in love with. It's called The Ring. Mary was the proud, petulant one of the two sisters. Petulant means kind of nasty. While Kate was the gentle-hearted and kind one. Orphaned during their teens, the girls lived in a small cottage from which they could hear the roar of the surf when the wind was high. The men of Dare County along the Outer Banks of North Carolina first begin to test their mettle against the honing of the sea while they're still boys. Young David Blunt was one of the bravest of this bred-to-the-sea breed. No night was too wild or treacherous, or the water's treacherous, for his rescue boat when the call came to bring in terrified passengers from a wrecked ship. David courted Kate, he was dating Kate, with the same fierceness of purpose that made him thrust his eager young face into the driving rain over the stormy Atlantic. At first, Mary tried to divert his attentions with her meek younger sister, but she failed, because David liked Kate better. But then she took an intense dislike to him. David knew it, but he didn't care. After a short time, Kate agreed to marry David, and David produced a diamond ring of surpassing beauty, which he placed upon her finger. When the winds battered the little cottage at night and the sound of the sea rose in a crashing crescendo, Kate would look at the flashing ring and say, "The fire from this ring somehow warms my spirit, and I know he will come home to me again." But one night, the sea was the victor. Savage waves assaulted the cape, and the tiny storm-tossed boat which David rowed like a young Viking was struck with a shattering blow. The mountainous waves crushed it as if it was a child's toy. When they came to tell her, Kate said nothing. From then on, she went silently about her tasks. At home and in the village, she rarely spoke, never smiled, until a neighbor woman said, "The girl is like a flower which the frost has touched." As Kate became more and more remote, Mary's vivaciousness seemed to increase, so she got happier and happier. There was an almost expectant air about her. Occasionally Occasionally, someone would see Kate looking at her ring, and only then did she resemble her former self, for her face would take on a strange glow. One morning, the wife of a fisherman who lived nearby heard a pounding at her door, and Mary's voice crying out, "Help me, help me! My sister, my sister, my sister Kate is dead." That night, Mary refused to let anyone keep her company as she sat with Kate's body. Her grief seemed too great. A small candle burned near the head of the coffin, and Mary sat at its side. For several hours, she barely moved. Then she leaned forward and looked over the side of the wooden box, which is the coffin. Her body swayed backwards slightly as if hesitating, then leaned forward, poised over the casket. This time her hand crept over the edge. She grasped something, tugged, grasped slightly, then tugged again, every muscle tense. Successful, she sank down into her chair with a sigh of deep satisfaction. A moment later she rose and held her hand up to the light of the candle. On her finger glowed the diamond. It's not the end. So what did Kate do? What did Mary do? Her sister died, and then what did Kate do? She took her ring. She stole her ring off her finger. Now, this is where we're at. We have David, who's died from the shipwreck. We have Mary, who's died because she died of a broken heart. We have Kate, who has her sister's diamond ring, the only thing her sister had from David. So they were not married yet. It was her engagement ring. Several nights later, Mary sat alone in the cottage. The night was a wicked one, and the wind and sea played an eerie duet. Then came a calling at the door above the sound of the weather. "Mary, I'm so cold. Oh, Mary, let me in." Who do you think this is? This happened night after night until Mary could not stand it any longer. Finally, she sought the advice of a neighbor woman who suggested she ask her visitor to come in and warm herself. That night, when she heard the same pleading voice, "Mary, I'm so cold, let me in. Mary, let me in." The wind blew open with a clatter, and a shadowy form drifted through, coming to rest quite close to where Mary stood. "Why, Kate," said Mary, "where are your beautiful white hands?" "In the grave, so cold. Oh, Mary, what have you done to me to leave me so cold?" "Well, Kate, where is your beautiful diamond ring?" With that, the ghost seized Mary's hand. It was mid-morning when the fisherman's wife could conceal her curiosity no longer. She came over to the cottage to see what happened. She knocked. Then she called, but there was no answer. Opening the unlocked door, she found Mary sitting in front of the dead embers of the fire. She answered not one of the woman's stream of questions. Mary just looked at her left hand. The fourth finger was badly bruised. So this is the ring finger, the left hand. The diamond ring was gone, nor was she ever seen wearing it again. End of story. So what happened? Kate's ghost came back and she took the ring back. Was it right for Mary to take the ring? No. Why would Mary do such a thing? Aaron.
She's mean.
Yeah, she's petulant. So that's our word, petulant. Yes. Yeah, because it made her sister happy, so she wanted that happiness too. And she was jealous that David liked her sister better than she liked then he liked her. Yeah. I'll sing a song and then we can read another story. How about that? Aaron, I think we have to adjust the camera.
How do you need me to adjust
it? Has to be lower, yeah.
Just to move this?
Just the, yeah, the dude, that guy needs to be. And then you can start, so you can,
No, pause.
yeah, you can just start, yeah. Dreams and songs to sing. It's so lonely without you by my side. I actually like the song better than the story, to be honest. Okay, so we've got another story. Got time for another story. And I've got a good one here. So I wanted to pick another North Carolina story. And who has been to Winston-Salem before? Yeah, you've been there. Okay. So Winston-Salem, it's about 2 hours and 10 minutes away. And I wanted to find one that Aaron and I went to the coast yesterday. We went to New Bern last night and got home about 11:30. It was in the pouring rain, so it was a really good time for a ghost story. But I didn't see any ghost stories about where we were last night. So the story that I just talked about was the closest one I could see from the coast. But this is called The Talking Corpse, and that's pretty scary because dead people really shouldn't talk. So The Talking Corpse. The keeper of the old Salem Tavern never forgot the night a dead man brought him a message. As the keeper of Salem Tavern, busily greeted new arrivals, he had not the slightest premonition that this night was to be the start of a most unusual chain of events. It was a bitterly cold November evening, and the drizzling rain added to the discomfort of the travelers. Many decided to stop early and enjoy the tavern's cheer. It was a house of entertainment with a widespread reputation for hospitality and had often been host to distinguished visitors. George Washington himself had stayed here for 2 days on his 1791 visit through North Carolina, and that was George Washington's summer tour, Rock On. As the hour grew late, the social rooms emptied, the guests retired, and the tavern keeper sat alone before his upright walnut desk. His office door opened off one side of the rear of the large tavern. Behind it was a sitting room used by his own family. At the left of his desk was a small window which admitted enough light for him to see his accounts. And at the far end of the tiny cubicle stood a tall wardrobe. A tall wardrobe is where you keep your clothes, like a closet. Often, before he went to bed, the tavern keeper would check his menu for the following day. As his eyes scanned the listing of mutton, venison, vegetables, kraut, cheese, and gingerbread, he thought he heard a faint rapping sound. He stepped out into the hall and listened. There was someone at the front door. While he threw back the heavy bolt, that's the lock, the hall clock chimed half after 11. He opened the door and a man staggered across the threshold. A wave of irritation swept over the tavern keeper at the thought of having to deal with a drunken traveler at this hour. But then he saw his guest's face. It was gray and drawn with suffering. He was desperately ill, not drunk. The tavern keeper summoned the hostler, the fellow, to care for his visitor's mare, which is his horse, seated the man in a chair, and then went to arouse his 2 servants. One he sent after a doctor with all possible haste, and the other he directed to help the sick man to his room. The man was in such anguish he could not even tell the tavern keeper his name. So the keeper decided to wait until morning to register him in the books. By now, the doctor had arrived. He examined the patient, administered some medicine, and then drew the tavern keeper to one side. This man is gravely ill. If he's not much improved by morning, you must call me. Shortly afterwards, the patient lapsed into a coma, and he died. Unfortunately, his clothes were not marked, nor did the contents of his saddlebags reveal a single clue to his identity. After a decent burial at the parish graveyard, received his remains, and the saddlebags were placed in the office wardrobe on the bare chance that he might someday, his family may claim them. Several days later, the innkeeper's servants began to mutter. They said of strange goings-ons in the hallways. They didn't want to go to the basement by themselves. The hostler was jumpy as the young maid. Nervously, they claimed something was haunting the place. The tavern keeper laughed. Then he grew increasingly exasperated as he tried without success to allay the fears of his staff. Nothing he could say seemed to calm them down. But then one night one of the servants dropped a heavy tray he was taking to the dining room. Afterwards, he said something had followed him. Finally, one night while the tavern keeper was in his office struggling over his accounts, a young maid burst in upon him, pale with fright. Something awful is out in that hall. Overcome by annoyance, the tavern keeper left the maid trembling in his office and strode out into the corridor. But it was empty. But then, a faceless, shadowy form appeared before him. He managed to conquer his fear and then heard the voice. In hollow tones, the voice said, "My brother of my death." He gave the dead traveler's name and the name of a brother in Texas. Then the hall was empty. When the innkeeper returned to his desk, his hands were shaking, but he grabbed his pen and began to write a letter to the address in Texas which the voice had given him. He described his guest and went into detail about his illness and death. So the tavern keeper wrote down the name that the ghost had given to him. It was not long before he received an answer in the mail. The reply confirmed his guest's identity and asked that the saddlebags be forwarded to his Texas home. The instructions of the spirit were no longer carried out. Then the particular manifestations, the ghostly appearances, stopped. And finally the servants didn't feel that something was haunting them. The ghost had left as soon as his errand was accomplished, but for the rest of his life, the keeper of the Salem Tavern told the story of the talking corpse and steadfastly vouched for its truth.